Cents Per Mile, featuring Charles Gracie, Paul Gibson, and Josh Haynes. Everyone knows the trucking industry has issues, but most people are afraid to talk about it.
Someone's got to do it.
With loads of recruiting and marketing experience and backed by the largest driver audience in the world, we deliver carriers the driver perspective, find solutions, and help make sense make sense.
Thanks for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson.
Hey, I'm Josh Haynes, and I've seen better cabinets in IKEA. For the last time, gentlemen, what are we talking about today?
Not that. We got to be positive. It's Cents Per Mile. We're off of a nice, exciting roll at Matt's, and there's more coming forth. So I say we hop into it.
Yeah, for sure. It's good times. We're always positive. No hot takes. Always for everything. For sure.
You know what I'm positive about?
Positive that I'm going to disagree with whatever you say.
I don't think you are. I'm excited because we're going to have a great guest coming on this week to talk about the recent merger of Tenstreet and DriverReach.
Oh, yeah. No, I am very interested in that. And we got Tim Crawford coming on later, and I am excited to hear what he has to say. But before that, we got to do all the stuff we normally do. So you can find us on Apple Music, Spotify, just about everywhere you get podcasts. So if you could, whenever you do go listen to it or watch it, if you could like, subscribe, rate wherever that is, just because then that gives us more momentum and allows us to do cooler stuff.
And you can also go to centspermilepodcast.com where you can suggest a topic to be a guest or to become a sponsor.
Sponsors. Speaking of, who's our sponsor today, Charles?
We have Mesilla Valley Transportation. Move forward with MVT. Go to drive4mvt.com. That's drive4mvt.com.
All right. Well, it's time for the news. All right. So it's time for the news. And there is news. And it's rough. But speaking of news, Josh got a little spicy with his intro. And he can get away with it because today is Josh's last episode.
Yeah, breaking news. We're losing our boy. He's going on to bigger and better things. Actually, is it bigger or better than Cents Per Mile?
Listen, what it comes down to is I've actually been on a weight loss journey. I've lost like 15 pounds, but now I did not know I was going to be losing like at least 350 between the two of you, right? That's got to be around there.
My guy.
Oh my God.
My guy. Hey, listen, all right. We know it's a lot of hard work to make us look as good as you do. It gets a little easier because you get the angles and we have hair. But
Dang.
No, we're super excited for you, Josh. You've been instrumental in the growth of the show. Not to mention, you're one of the homies on the team. It's sad but exciting at the same time. You want to tell everyone where you're going?
Yeah, I am actually moving on to Broker Carrier Summit. I'm going to be helping them with their video department and really excited for the new things. I will say I'm sure I'll be sneaking in every once in a while. I may have copied some of the, links for the show. So I may just randomly pop in and y'all just won't even know. Good luck.
Paul, after the show, we need to switch to links.
Yeah.
No, it's exciting. Broker Carrier Summit's been doing some exciting things, and one of them is gaining you. So it's bittersweet. We lose our homie, but at the same time, we're definitely going to see you around, like in April when Cents Per Mile is at the Broker Carrier Summit covering it.
Yep. So it's just me and Charles.
Yeah. Paul, have you thought about without Josh behind the camera, who's behind the camera?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'll give you a hint. It's a banana.
It's not me.
Yeah. No, it'll be a time. I'm going to miss you, dude. You made our lives easier. We were a great team. And while it might be, I know that wasn't an easy choice, but I think that's a solid move, and they're going to love you over there.
We're going to miss you over here.
Yeah, for sure. You're my favorite coworker. Like when we do the Who's Your Favorite on the show, it's definitely you. Except for maybe me. But that's only after years of therapy and learning to love myself.
I'll still probably get votes for like who's your favorite person. I expect it from any of your guys' guests. So
Yeah, but I am excited to see what happens to everybody over at Broker Carrier Summit. I'm so pumped to see what their content starts to look like after you get over there.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff.
What's not exciting?
The news.
The actual news.
I know. We tried to start off with something exciting, but we actually have to jump into Trump was touting his Panama victory, then China stepped in. NBC News reported that tussle over the two ports on the Panama Canal shows Beijing's willingness to assert its power as the U.S. attempts to roll back Chinese presence in the Western Hemisphere. This is an interesting one. It was the huge deal that President Donald Trump touted as a victory in his campaign, the take back of the Panama Canal from China. And it looks like it could be on the rocks amid some pushback from Beijing at this point. The $23 billion sale involving two parts run by C.K. Hutchinson, a private company based in China territory of Hong Kong, and the consortium led by the U.S. investment firm BlackRock have been scheduled to be signed last week. But the agreement between the two have been delayed under pressure from China, whose market regulator launched a review of the deal as a state-run newspaper attacked it as undermining China's national interests. Why is this important? Well, outside of it being part of his inaugural speech, Trump claimed without providing evidence that China controlled the 50-mile canal and vowed that the United States will be taking back this waterway. It's vital to national security. We've heard that line. He didn't rule out military action. He's also directed the Defense Department to draw up plans to send in troops to reclaim the canal. I mean, this is something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think for us, because we, obviously we don't like to dabble in all this on air without having some sort of aspect of, transportation in there. I'm just saying, if a boat were to get stuck in the middle of the canal, kind of like what happened a few years ago, and they're fighting about it, how do you think that's going to work out?
Well, I mean, we had the Evergreen situation. So
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Is this 2025's version of that?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm curious what a fight over that would look like, or if America didn't gain control of it and China happened to. I would be very curious to see what that would look like, especially considering our next story.
Well, before we switch, if there's any freight friends out there that can really weigh in on this side of things of what that would look like if we didn't have control of it, or if we did, love to have you reach out. Go to the centspermilepodcast.com and suggest a topic so we can bring you on and talk about it, because this is out of the realm of my expertise, but I think it's one of those things that our listeners would love to dive into.
Thomas Wilson. Right. But yeah,
shameless plug for the Gandalf for freight.
For sure. But with that though, like with the next story though, like depending on how all of that unfolds, if this next one unfolds, that's some.
Yeah, I mean, the next story is the U.S. to levy fees on China-linked ships. Pushed allies to do likewise. Draft executive order came through. So in this one, looks like March 6th, the United States is planning to charge fees for docking at U.S. ports on any ship that is part of a fleet that includes Chinese-built or Chinese-flagged vessels, and will push allies to act similarly or face retaliation. The drafted executive order. The administration of President Donald Trump has a bid to recirculate, and man, this is deep. When you hit me with the story, I didn't know what it. All right.
Yeah, basically, like any ship that comes that docks, that like the fleet has China-built ships,
but
they would charge them a fee.
But the numbers here, so Chinese shipbuilders account for more than 50% of all merchant vessel cargo capacity produced globally each year. It's up from 5% in 1999.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, and part of that, the reason it coming back up is because of the whole tariff situation, which all of this could change by the time this airs, since we recorded a week ahead. But like the concept of that, like on top of like everything that's going on with the tariff, like that's especially China saying they're going to fight till the end on that. Because ultimately all of that to get to like that's stuff coming off the port. That's the like a lot of the supply chain. So once that hits trucks, if you're doing that and it stops people from bringing it in.
Well, and it even says here the draft order proposed fees that should be imposed on any vessel that enters a U.S. port, regardless of where it was built or flagged, if that vessel is part of a fleet that includes vessels built or flagged by the People's Republic of China. So it goes even a step further on there. And it's one of those things where the U.S. administration and Chinese officials could not immediately be reached for any comments on this article, but the document draws from the U.S. Trade Representative's Office to levy fees of $1.5 million on Chinese-built vessels. That's a lot of money. You want to talk about putting a noose around the transportation and logistics industry. This is one of those things there where long term, time will tell, but short term, the outlook on this is pretty grim.
Yeah, like that's what I mean, because then you have like anything, like I can't imagine the same amount of freight would come through the ports. Like another thing that I read, because I had read about this
is Temu dead after that?
Well, that's the whole May 2nd thing. When people start having to pay like tariffs on anything you order,
$70 for your box.
TikTok shop. Well, it's like a minimum $25 per item, or like a certain whatever the tariff is percentage, whichever one's more expensive.
I wonder if that was some of the thought process behind this, is like TikTok shop. That's all in limbo right now, and like that essentially would shut down the TikTok shop and all the freebies that they give out the promoters to sell.
Yeah, no, those people have to start paying the tariff. Even if they get something for free, they have to pay the tariff on like the cash value of the item. Which, Josh, you can
if
actually,
it comes off TikTok shop, some of that stuff's like $1.
Right, but like Josh, for instance, you can talk about it because you do all sorts of reviews from companies from China that send you stuff for filmmaking.
One of the ladies that is another creator that had products sent to her to review, which I get camera gear sent to me to review. It is a free product being sent for the video. They're not sponsoring you. They're just sending you a product to make you. That's basically how they're paying you. She got hit with a bill 2 weeks later from the company with a tariff bill that the company did not want to pay for, and she was going to have to pay. That's crazy.
That's crazy. But if anyone out there has American built products that they want to send me, like, American built big trucks, or, superchargers that they want me to test out on my truck, I'm always open for that conversation.
Charles must be talking about Tesla, because they're the only company vehicles that are made in America.
Listen, man,
that's what they
my
said.
truck cannot be plugged in. I just can't do it.
Surprisingly, Honda has a lot of yeah, no, either way. No, that's nuts. We'll see how that affects things.
You can plug mine into a gas pump.
Love for someone to fill my car up with gas. But either way, to circle back real quick, Josh, we're going to miss the heck out of you, man.
Yeah.
We hope you have a good time, and we wish you well, and you are welcome on the show anytime.
Yes, and in your absence, if you could get a full-size cutout to put there on the wall so we can keep your, just like that.
I'm not setting up a third camera. But either way, it is time to go to an ad break, and then we'll be back to Make Sense, where Charles interviews Tim Crawford about the Tenstreet and DriverReach merger.
Mesilla Valley Transportation, founded by truck drivers for truck drivers. Why choose MVT? Well, it's simple.
I started off as a driver. Now I'm managing routes. With MVT, the sky's the limit.
Balance is key. State-of-the-art equipment, a strong focus on safety, and a family-driven company culture where respect and hard work are at the core. Mesilla Valley Transportation, where we care about you. Join our family today.
All right. So instead of going behind the desk with Tenstreet, there is a lot going on over there. So we're giving the whole segment to them on cents per mile. I got Tim Crawford from Tenstreet joining me. Tim, how's it going?
Hey, great, Charles. Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, exciting times happening over there right now. I mean, you guys had some big news that came out, and I just kind of want to hop into it because I know it's one of those things that shook the industry in all the right ways.
Appreciate it. Yeah, happy to talk about it. Yeah.
So you guys had this announcement that Tenstreet and DriverReach have now merged. What event led to these companies coming together?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we've been competitors with DriverReach for a long time, right? And so we knew, we'd had conversations over time, and the stars just aligned, right? And it was the right thing for DriverReach as a business, and we think it was the right thing for Tenstreet as a business. And by that I mean gives us the ability to add more value, create more value for the folks in the industry, right? We have a really long-term focus, right? How can we do things that make life better for carriers and drivers both? And we looked at the deal and we said, oh, hey, if we did combine forces, what would be the result, right? Can we do stuff that we couldn't have done otherwise? And I think the answer to that was, yeah, we think we can. And so we were glad that we were able to get the deal done.
Well, it's exciting because, like you said, you guys have been competitors, and Tenstreet being the longest standing ATS out there, it's got a whole suite of tools. It was just natural for eventually someone else to come into the mix, and to see them come together was one of those things I never thought I'd see. So when that news hit, I had people messaging me. I'm like, what? It was pretty impressive. It was earth-shattering news in all the right ways. And in a 24-hour news cycle like we find ourselves in, some good news is always welcome.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
well, I don't think on a lot of people's bingo cards, right? I think we probably did catch some.
No, it definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
So how will this support the industry going forward?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. One of the things we believe, right? If you look at what Tenstreet's always tried to do, is we've tried to find ways to connect carriers and drivers, and we do it. We think we try to do it in interesting ways. And our ability to do that varies with scale, right? The more, if you're trying to connect two populations, the more of population A and more population B that you have on the platform, hey, the cooler stuff you can do, right? And so,
yeah, certainly,
and that undergirded the whole deal, right? That was sort of the operating thesis from the beginning of, okay, the addition of the DriverReach clients to our platform gives drivers more options, right? And the addition of the drivers that are connected in the DriverReach world gives our Tenstreet clients just a bigger platform. We think that's good for everybody, and that takes a couple of different forms, right? If you think about the ability for a driver to easily apply, right? Every month, we save drivers 12 years of data entry time per month. Like if you spread it out, you go, okay.
I can attest to this as a former driver.
Exactly, right? So, hey, we wanted to do more of that. And increasingly, like what we're seeing now, and we've introduced a couple features last year, we're getting ready to introduce a bunch of new features next month that are AI-based, AI-enabled, right? And the AI, it's an interesting world and an amazing world, but it's part software, but also part of it is how much data do you have to make the software better, right? And having more cycles in gives us the ability in a way that is respects the intellectual property of our carriers, respects the driver privacy, respects sort of people making connections in a way that we think is interesting. You look at some AI solutions out in the market, and it's like the image that I get when I look at some of the solutions is like the self-checkout line at Walmart, right? Where it's where the motivation is, hey, how do we remove all the humans out of the picture, and it turns drivers into like just fungible form fillers and takes recruiters totally out of the mix. right? That's not our view at all, right? We're really focused
I
on.
think the recruiters appreciate that.
Makes sense, right? You think about it.
Yeah.
It's what we hear consistently, and we see it in the data. We see it anecdotally. Driving is all about making connections and all about relationship. And so we're really focused on, hey, how can we get AI scale so that people can make better connections and better relationships, not eliminate relationships and eliminate people. And that made it especially important for us to try to find ways to get to scale. And we think this deal, I think, gets us further down that road in a way that makes sense.
No, that was a very detailed answer, and I appreciate it. You actually took away one of my follow-up questions, so awesome. It sounds like a win-win. Speaking of win-wins, I think we can finally put one of those things that have been floating out there to sleep for a while. What do you have to say to people that still think Tenstreet sells driver leads? Can we finally kill that rumor once and for all now that it's all under one roof?
I really hope so. I really hope so. To be clear, we've never done it. We never will do it, right? And the biggest reason I think, or the biggest thing for people to get their head around, if we were to do it, it would be stupid. It would backfire on us in ways that don't make any sense, right? And
it's that long-term view, like you said. That's the one thing that you guys have always been looking at, the long game. You're not looking at what's right here, right now. Only.
Exactly. And so, I think the reality around turnover in the industry and job-seeking behavior in the industry, that it's just that I think sometimes gets lost in the shuffle. From a driver's perspective, every time that driver changes jobs, he's probably out of pocket $2,000, right?
Minimum,
right? You're turning in one truck, you're going to orientation, you're getting from one to another, the drug test, all the things.
Not to mention the transition of getting to know the employer. You're not making what they're advertising the first couple of weeks because it's the get to know you period.
Exactly. And as the new driver on the board, you're probably not getting the best miles. I mean, that's just especially in this market, right?
Yeah.
And so the reality is drivers are making the best economic decisions they can make. They're being as thoughtful as possible. And so I think some people look at our job as connectors and go, Tenstreet's really encouraging drivers to do these, and the reality is drivers are more thoughtful than that, number one. And number two, if they weren't coming onto using our platform to do those things, all the drivers know you to Google truck driving jobs. You probably know really well, hey, there's no shortage of ways. If you're unhappy and we want to go somewhere, even in this market, there's a million opportunities, right?
I'm still paying for when Paul put me as a joke into a job board using my cell phone.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So
that's exciting stuff. And being a former driver and someone that works on the recruiting side, I could tell you I've come across drivers that have flat out said, if it's not an Intelli app, I'm not doing it, because they've gotten comfortable with how that works and how to maneuver through that system. That speaks volumes to the platform. As someone that used to drive when that was becoming a thing, it made it a whole lot easier, because I was at that weird transition where you still had paper apps in some places, and you'd like, hey, you got to drive in here to fill out this paper app. I'm like, you guys not have Tenstreet? And that was from a driver's perspective at that time, before it's gotten to the junction it's at now. So along those lines, is there anything that you'd like to say to the people that are concerned that this might leave them fewer options?
Yeah. I mean, I think what we see is, we see nothing both structural that we're either we're planning to do around sort of the DriverReach technology, the DriverReach carrier base, DriverReach drivers that are sort of on that platform, that anybody would have a legitimate heartache over, right? And in our view, right, we're being trying to be really thoughtful and keep that long run in mind, right? It doesn't do us any good to go through all the work to get a deal like this done and then not treat that business with kid gloves, right? It just doesn't get there, doesn't get to the end that we were aiming for. And so, and what we see in the data on the core of the Tenstreet platform is, we're really focused on our Driver Pulse app, right? And what the interesting thing is, Driver Pulse users, they're 5%, 10% less likely to be on the market than a non-Driver Pulse user. We see them a little less active, and we see them, 3 or 4%, 5% some months in terms of tenure, where they tend to stay a little bit longer.
Nice.
Well, which really anecdotally, not hugely, right? We're not sort of trumpeting it as, oh, hey, this app in and of itself. I think what it really reflects is the drivers who tend to use the app tend to be professional drivers. This is their career, right? They tend to be really serious and thoughtful about their career. And people who are really serious and thoughtful about their career tend to not be on the market quite so much, tend to stay a little bit longer at carriers. That's really what's a reflection of more than anything we're doing. I think it's a reflection of like who we're resonating the most deeply with.
I think it's also a reflection of the driver market changing. You're starting to see a younger demographic of drivers in the market who have embraced technology, i.e. apps or even social media or a combination of both. So I think it's indicative of what we find ourselves in today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely right.
Is there anything that you would like to say to DriverReach clients that are undecided about coming aboard or, following this transition into Tenstreet?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying really hard to engage with DriverReach clients to have an open dialogue, right? We think we can create a ton of value for all of their clients. But the reality is, if there's a client that says, hey, that's not the system for me, hey, we totally get it, right? We're going to have a candid, transparent conversation about what we do and what we can do, and think. Coming at that conversation with an open mind, I think we're going to get to where we can provide a lot of value for those DriverReach clients and look forward to kind of having them on the platform.
I'm going to add to that. It's one of the things that are often less thought about, but coming as someone that's been the driver, been the carrier, and now sits on the vendor side, the one thing that's always been a selling point for Tenstreet for me is the ability to kind of work within those different variances of the experience as a vendor. And if you're a carrier, most carriers are using supplemental recruiting power to some level. Tenstreet's always had this ability to mesh the systems well. So I'm able to transfer apps in without troubling the driver to do a whole nother app like that. There's no other system out there that has allowed me to not trouble the driver's experience. And we know how detrimental that is to the recruiting process. If I'm going to tell the driver, hey, you got to fill out 2 apps just to get this one job. It's one of those things that I don't think people think about. And I think that it's going to be a welcome surprise for those people switching over, because a lot of them use supplemental and a lot of that burden falls back to the driver in the current status before this merge.
Exactly. And I think, and what we take a lot of pride in is that sort of app transfer process, that app movement process. We've worked really hard to make sure that that's absolutely transparent to the driver. When that driver goes, oh, hey, how did company A get my data? It's literally right in the app. How'd my data get here? And we say, oh, here's exactly how this happened and we think that's why so many drivers use the app, is we've tried so hard to sort of build and maintain that credibility of, look,
transparency.
Nothing's happening with your data that you're not directing, right?
No, it's definitely what sets you guys apart is the transparency in the process and just the ability to educate people along the way. A lot of times people put fixes out there and there's no education behind them. So then they're like, why is no one using this? You guys are constantly elaborating onto the whys and the hows and the analytics behind it, which is why you're Tenstreet.
Right. Yeah.
So how will Tenstreet ensure a smooth transition for those DriverReach users?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be very, very collaborative and cooperative. Right. Again, you mentioned long-term and the risk of being a broken record. That continues to be our focus. Right. Our focus on this was, hey, obviously we want to get scale, but the way you get scale is make sure that the process is smooth. And we're interested in, hey, what can that scale bring to the industry, not just in 25, but in 26, 27, 28, right? And so the only way we're going to get there is if we have smooth transitions. And that, every carrier is unique about how they run their recruiting and how they manage that part of their process. And I think it's going to be a very bespoke process, one client at a time, making sure, it's smooth. I mean, we had clients, the deal was announced on a Monday. We had clients reaching out to us within hours saying, hey, look, I'm ready to go. And we're grateful for that. And we are full steam ahead trying to work with those clients. And I think there's some other clients who very reasonably are like, hey, wait, I've got a really complex process. How are you going to support me? And the answer is, hey, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you're using it, how we can make the data migration, user training, all the things that go as smooth as possible.
All the nuances that no one thinks about until you go to switch an ATS system.
Exactly.
And that's awesome that you guys are looking at that from such a holistic point of view, trying to, mitigate any concerns or anything really that can trouble any of the users and or carriers that are on the platforms.
Right.
That's fantastic. Lastly, but definitely not least, what excites you most for what's next for Tenstreet, its clients, and any hints on anything upcoming that we should be excited about?
Yeah, I mean, we're really focused. We do a lot of product introductions in the spring. We're just a few weeks away from our conference. We're going to introduce a lot of new things, and I think we're leaning heavily into we're doing more and more AI stuff. Again, AI in support of those relationships between carriers and support of those relationships with drivers. And also, recognizing, what can we do to make the driver's life even easier from, taking away a lot of the pain that just goes with working in a very regulated industry. We have driver application data on, I think it's 94% of the drivers in the country. And we've done a fair bit with that. And I mentioned earlier, we save drivers a lot of data entry time, but we think there's more we can do to make their life easier. And we're pretty focused on, okay, how do we do that?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we got a lot.
No one's out there saying, I want to make the driver's life easier. Way to go.
Yeah. So that's our focus.
No, that's awesome. And for anyone that missed it, yes, the user conference is right around the corner. It is a great time. I will be there. It's a great time to get your information, network with your peers. And most of all, the one thing that's unique about it is they have team on site to help you with your account, answer questions, and optimize. And what better way to do it than in Vegas face to face?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
So, Tim, I appreciate you carving out some time to share all this big news and answer some of these questions. I look forward to seeing you here in a couple of weeks in Vegas at the user conference. And again, if people want to find you, how can they get you guys?
I mean, we're easy to find, right? Tenstreet.com. My email is just tim@Tenstreet. Super simple.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. And thank you, Josh, for everything you've done for Cents Per Mile. We're going to miss you, but we'll see you at the Broker Carrier Summit, I'm sure.
Thanks, gentlemen. It's been real. It's been fun. It's not really been fun, but I'll see y'all around.
Tells that story.
Listen, all the hair's here. I don't see nothing on you, babyface. So,
hey, there's some.
As the person with the most hair, I would like to say, I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson. See you next time.